Right guys, so about a year ago, I guess, give or take, I had an idea to build a Hexbeam. It was an antenna that I really wasn't interested in before because I thought it was going to cost me lots of money and not give me really anything other than what I had in my Moxon antennas. But I started doing a bit of research and I've been able to get to a stage where I want to show you guys the progress that I've made with this antenna. This is really a part one. The next part will be the sort of full-blown antenna with it being properly completed with a bill of materials. I'm using all standard components on this antenna, so it shouldn't matter where you are in the globe, you should be able to source these components. So if there's anything that you're specifically looking for in the video, leave a comment below and I'll find a link for you to whatever it is that you're perhaps having trouble looking for. So the Hexbeam, so it was designed by Steve, G3TXQ, been Silent Key for some while now. So it was his brainchild, and it's really probably the most popular multiband wire beam antenna around. I'm building a version which is going to give me 20, 17, 15, 12 and 10 meters, and I have got the option to add 6 meters onto it. I did own a commercially made version by the late Waldy, SP7IDX, about, this was 2012, 2013, and I was thoroughly impressed with that antenna. It was at a time where I wouldn't even dream about building an antenna like this. So this is a field day style portable antenna is what I would say. It's not one that you would put up permanently at home, but if you want to put up for a weekend, for a couple of weeks, for a few hours, it's going to be probably ideal for you. I've got some notes here that I'm going to talk through, but really it's just to get it out there, guys, if you want to start building this. And as I say, when I get it finished, I'll give you the full breakdown. I'll give you the full bill of materials with all the parts costed. Cost-wise of this antenna, I've costed it to about £90, £92. I've still got some other things to buy, but I'm confident I'll keep the price under £150. Probably could have done it cheaper, so that's like 175 US dollars, something like. But I want to make it, you know, as my other antennas, I want to make it kind of professional looking. So if I was to give this to someone, they would think, wow, this is maybe something that's been purchased commercially. A website that I referenced a lot during this build is K4KIO, who sells Hexbeams in the States. So you could buy one ready-made, but he also has a website that you can take measurements from. And this website's where I got all my basic measurements. And I would recommend you go to that website. Other than that, inspiration has come from all over the place. No one other place has sort of given me the ideas, but I think it really is my take. There's not quite another Hexbeam out there that's like mine. Now, because it's a Hexbeam, because you've got multiple components that are the same length, so the arms and all the ropes, you need to make sure everything is absolutely symmetrical. Okay guys, symmetrical. I'll stress that again. So just, you know, because if you don't, you'll have a bit of a wonky shape there going on. So I've spent a lot of time today doing some R&D. I had some issues before. I was using 8mm diameter poles for the spreaders and they were just far too floppy. I tried to strengthen them up, they were no good. I've now upgraded to 11mm temp poles and these are fantastic. These will be absolutely great. So I really want to talk to you about the components that I'm actually going to use, and that'll give you a good idea. So the center plate, or the center hub, perhaps as it's commonly known, as I say, you can build this with basically all common tools. You don't need anything special. So the plate is actually a 200mm diameter aluminium plate. It's 4mm thick. You'll need to do the conversion in old money into inches. And I've drilled that to accept some hydraulic tube clamps or pipe clamps. Now, the drill pattern where you need to drill the holes, when I do the final video, I'll actually give you a link to my Google Drive and a template. And if you print this out in actual size, all you need to do is cut that out, stick it on your aluminium plate and drill the holes, and job's a good one. The aluminium plate was bought from eBay, really inexpensive. I think it was like £7 or £8 delivered really, really inexpensive. The clamps, as I've just briefly mentioned, I believe they were RAPR 112s, but they're a class 1 size clamp, and the biggest diameter that they go to is 12 millimeters. So I actually had to bore them out to 13 millimeters or ½ inch to accept ½ inch tube, which I'll talk about in a minute. So that was a little bit job in itself. So I basically had to sandwich them together, and I had a step drill that's biggest diameter was 13 millimeters, and I used that to then just drill all the way through, and it worked out nicely. If I didn't do that, I would have needed to go to a class 2 clamp, and I would needed a different center plate, and it would just been a lot of extra manufacturing. So I'm glad that I didn't actually have to do that. So those, within those clamps, so there's 12 of those, and then inside those there's a little sleeve. Now that's ½ inch diameter, 12.7 millimeters, and I think the wall thickness is about 0.8, something like that. But between the spreader, the 11-meter poles, there's 0.3 millimeters of clearance, and it's just nice and snug. It's just ideal. At the back of them, I've put a little bolt just to act as an end stop. Stainless steel fittings I use is basically for all my antennas, and typically I use 304 grade. I'm not in a marine environment very much, so 304 stainless is fine. So to attach that center plate to the center post, I use something called shaft supports. I think that's how you call them. I bought them from Amazon, and these are to suit 20 millimeter diameter, because that's the diameter of my center post or center mast. So the center mast post, it's made from 20 millimeter diameter tube, so that's just over 3/4 inch. Again, I've used the same types of clamps. I believe these were RAPR 320, so size 3, 20 millimeter diameter. I've got coax jumpers between all these, between these 5 of these, obviously for all the bands, and I've used RGAX because that's what I've had to hand. I'll handle a kilowatt, no problem at all for those short lengths, and it was a bit nicer to work with than like an RG58 or a high power RG58. On the top of that post, there's a PVC end cap, and attached to that, there's an M6 eye bolt, which is stainless steel. Now, the arms that I'm using, I've mentioned that these are 11 millimeter temp poles. These are freely available, and you should be able to get these any country in the world that you're in. I think you need 5 packets of these. I could be wrong. I think there's 4 arms per spreader. But I'll confirm that in the final video. As I say, I tried 8 millimeters, no good. You do get a 9 millimeter, and I think, or 9.5, and I think that's what Chuck KK6USY used, and his worked quite well. But I just opted for the slightly bigger ones, and they worked really, really well. When I got that first pole up and I got it tensioned, there was no sag in the poles, and I thought job was a good one. So really simple temp poles. On the end of those, on the very end of those temp poles, I've drilled a hole all the way through, and I've actually got a stainless steel keychain or a key ring, and I basically attach my ropes to those, and also the 20-meter element to that. The ropes that I'm using, so you've got 6 going from the center out, and then 6 going round about the outer diameter, and once you get all these tensioned up, this thing becomes really rigid. So I'm just using a temporary solution just now. It's actually this stuff here. I've got it to hand. It's a Webtex 4 millimeter. They call it paracord, or 3 millimeter actually, but I think it's bigger than 3 millimeters. It's not great stuff. It's cheap. It's about a tenner a roll, but it's good, you know, just for working with. Once I get through with that and I get all my finished dimensions, I'm then going to move on to this stuff. This is Mastrant P 2 millimeter. This is beautiful stuff. And it's not, again, not really that expensive, but I just wanted to spend a little bit of money, and that's what will be costed in. On the ends of the rope, there is stainless steel S-hooks. These S-hooks came from Amazon, and all I did with them, some of the ends I just closed up with a pair of pliers, or on some of them I just had to open up a bit, which let them attach to the 6 millimeter eye bolt on the top of the center post. So that's the ropes. The elements, so the wires that I'm using, going from the experience on the Moxon, I'm actually using stainless steel wire. People say stainless, what nonsense. You would never notice the difference between that and copper in real terms. So that's what I'm using. I'm not saying that's what I'll continue to use, but it's good. It's quite easy to work with when you know how. It's quite lightweight and it's really, really thin. So it's 1mm diameter. So I'm using that. I'm using copper ferrules to basically create the little loops. Because it's bare, I don't need to worry about it corroding. And I just use a wing nut to attach it with a little loop on the end to attach it to the centre post for the respective band. Now, you need a way of basically constraining the wire as you go around, and I looked at a number of different options. I looked at Jubilee clips with little rings, hooks, but I've actually found these little clamps. I don't know what you want to call them, little clips. I think they're for tents and they're for tent poles anyway, designed for that. So these actually seem to work a treat. So what I've done is I've actually cut a little slot in one end, and then basically when I put my wire out, I'm just going to hook this on, so I don't need to worry about threading wire through and actually aid setup time. So I need to buy a load more of those. Today, all I managed to do was get 20 metre on it and 17 metres. And when I knew when I did that, the rest of the bands will go on it, and I need to remake my 10 metre element. So that's another job that I need to do. So there's still loads of jobs I need to do with this, but I thought it's been a really fun project. I really sickened myself when it didn't work with the 8mm poles, but I just put everything in a box, I left it, and I waited till a time where I actually got some inspiration. I felt like actually doing it again, and actually putting it back together today. It felt great getting it up. You know, I'm able to lift this up with one hand. I can move it to the side. I was giving it a great shake, and this thing was pretty solid. Now, I'm not saying it's going to take a winter storm, but I think it's going to take, you know, 30, 40 mile an hour winds, you know, touch wood. That'll do that, but I'm not really worried about it. I'm going to fit this to my Waymo 11-metre mast, although it's not going to be up 11 metres. I should have actually thought about this sooner, because I might need to make the diameter of the centre mast a little bit bigger, but we'll see, because the idea, because that's an aluminium post, I just want to put that straight into the mast and just clamp it to it, and I'll be able to rotate it, and I could turn the whole mast. I've got a way of doing that from the bottom, just the Armstrong method, the manual method, and that'll allow me to actually turn the beam. So it's a lot of antenna for the money. If you've never used a beam, you'll be absolutely blown away. They blow ground-mounted verticals away in a suburban surrounding, certainly. If you're over salt water, then that's a different kettle of fish. But unbelievable. If you really want to make a difference, get your signal out there. You know, you really want to be looking at a beam, certainly for 20 metre and upwards, where everyone's on 20 metres, are running beams, are running power, and sometimes you struggle to actually get through the pile-ups. With a Hexbeam, you'll find that much, much easier. All right, guys, I hope that was of some interest to you. As I say, leave anything you're specifically trying to source, and I'll put links down in the comments, and I'll do my best to find a link for it so you can actually get started on your Hexbeam, hopefully. That's it for now. See you later. 73.